development point of view. Let me get my screen sharing going. Sorry. It is not playing well. Here we go. Entire screen. That screen. And we have to swap. Cool. So hopefully you can see my presentation okay. This session is, as we said, thanks mate, where, as I said, what we're talking about today is how do we build Power BI reports at lightning speed with AI tools. But really is an exploration of where I'm at currently in terms of what I'm using, the different tools and techniques that I'm kind of playing around with. I think there's some really fascinating stuff in this space. And I think a lot of people are kind of interested. I think now is the time to really to look into this. If you're just getting started, it's not too late, but it is something that I think you do need to explore. I think the whole way, particularly with PBIP format in Power BI coming out, so Ruri Umano was at the Power BI Global Summit last week, and he gave a hint that PBIP format will go GA sometime this year. I think in the middle of the year, I think is what he said, maybe Q3. That means that we are all going to be moving to this format. Like PBIX is really going to go away. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So don't feel like you need to raise your hand. I assume most people in the tool, in the session, are using Power BI in some way. You're Power BI developers, or maybe Fabric developers or data engineers of some kind. And so you're probably familiar with all of the kind of things that are that can happen when you're writing, in the traditional way. You're dealing with PBIX files. You often will be saving multiple versions of PBIX files. You've got repetitive DAX measures that you potentially need. If you're not using something like Tabular Editor, then you potentially are going to, spend hours writing your DAX measures. If you have a merge conflict between PBIX files, how do you resolve that? Like what if somebody edits a file and then another person edits a file at the same time, and then you need to kind of resolve those conflicts? How do you do that? It's not really possible with a PBIX file. You just have to rebuild all of the work that you've done. And you might be, manually recreating patterns or not really being able to do proper code review and stuff like that. So there's lots of issues with the current kind of setup of Power BI if you're using PBIX files, and this sort of concept of PBIX is really because of that format, that binary PBIX file. It's a zipped up kind of format. You can't really merge those files. You can't really use AI over those PBIX files because they are binary files, and AI would have to unpack. They basically, in order to look at a PBIX file, they'd have to unzip it, look at all of the low level kind of, which would be mostly XML and JSON, and then try and piece together what your model and your data looks like. So you've got lots of issues when it comes to dealing with that format. Now, what we want to be doing, and anybody that comes from like a data engineering background who uses a lot of like more kind of modern code tools, or anybody who comes from like a web dev background, for example, they're going to want to do like proper version control, things like CI/CD. There's we potentially we're using AI tools to generate all of these things in the web world, and we'll have a little look at that potentially later. But what if we could use these tools that all the web developers are using to build like new websites and all this kind of stuff against our Power BI models? And this is really, an area that's been of keen interest to me. Something that I'm interested in just getting really good at is how do we build out Power BI solutions without actually ever opening Power BI desktop? And can we do that using AI? And then what are the different patterns we can potentially do? And then how can we use things like AI skills, which we'll get to, and all those other bits and pieces? So I noticed there was maybe a few people just using Copilot. A few people have kind of got into VS Code. A few people have kind of got into like VS Code plus Claude Code. I think there's a big mix in the industry at the moment of people who are kind of tooling around with these different AI tools. And what I wanted to do is kind of introduce what I think is the strongest stack right now. You can use a few different models. You don't necessarily have to use Claude or ChatGPT, you can potentially select the models, your preferred model, but there is a kind of working pattern that I think everybody kind of needs to learn as soon as possible, because I think this is going to be the way that we're going to be doing BI solutions in the future. And when I say in the future, I mean in the pretty near future, assuming that PBIP comes out and goes GA. And potentially, depending on how the whole industry goes, we might even be building these like BI solutions and almost completely bypassing Power BI altogether. And so I want to show you that current state of what that pattern looks like, where the whole world is up to, and then we can have a conversation about, happy to answer any questions or talk about that. But really, this is about how do we interact with these Power BI files? How can we talk to the semantic model? How can we edit DAX? How can we edit Power Query? How can we do all these things and not necessarily, and do code review and all that kind of stuff? So I'll talk about the foundational elements of what we're talking about. Essentially, this is around text-based Power BI, right? So what is PBIP mean? What's PBIR format? What's Tyndall format? These are the three kind of foundational layers. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with this now. We've been talking about it for quite a while. PBIP's been out for a while. Tyndall's been out for a while. PBIR is kind of coming into the fore now, is the main thing. This is the one thing that's holding back PBIP format, is the actual PBIR format. Once that gets finished, then everything will be finished. I'll talk about the AI layer, how we're developing using AI these days, how developers like you or people who are who are analysts and things like that can potentially use tools like GitHub Copilot and Claude Code to really accelerate your work like you wouldn't believe. And like for me, I feel like I'm doing like 3 or 4 times the work I can do in a day, just because I'm using AI in this particular way. And it's really only happened in the last couple of months that I've been able to do that, because I've kind of refined the pattern to a point where I'm happy with it. And honestly, I think I'm going slow compared to what I could be. We'll talk a little bit about MCP servers. I'm actually going to, when I created this thing, I was like, I'm going to talk about MCP servers a lot, and MCP servers are the future. I actually think they're almost come and gone. So MCP servers are important, but they're not the be all and end all. I think actually skills is where the whole industry has kind of moved very quickly, and I'll talk to you about why that is and why MCP servers are good, but there's also a problem with them. And then we'll have a look at a demo. I've built out a bit of a demo on the space parts data set, which is a really nice data set that's supplied by Tabular Editor, the guys at Tabular Editor. I'll talk to you about a little bit about the process. Hopefully we've got time to do that stuff, and then we can talk about some next steps. Feel free to butt in. I like it when people heckle. I like it when people want to ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you have as you go along. If you've got any burning questions about AI, how people use AI in business, this is basically my full-time job right now, is helping people figure out AI. And so I'm more than happy to help you guys with any of that kind of stuff. So throw those questions in the chat if you want to. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the foundation of text-based Power BI. So this is really what we need to unlock modern development workflows. The first thing is PBIP format. Like I said, this is your report, instead of being saved as a single binary file as a PBIX file, it gets saved as a couple of folders that contain plain text files. And so when you enable PBIP format inside Power BI, you immediately, your file type changes from this blob of binary to a set of text files. And as soon as you change something to a set of text files like that, it becomes a programmable kind of interface. It means that we can use tools like VS Code to look at those files. And there's an awful lot of developer tools that have been developed over 20 years of DevOps kind of capability that we can now take advantage of, right? This is all stuff that we could never use before as analysts, because we couldn't really interact with those types of files, and we didn't really have that workflow. And so what we're doing is we're adopting this modern development workflow in the area of analysts, which traditionally haven't had this kind of experience. And it's also true of a lot of data people, particularly if you come from a traditional SQL data warehouse background, you probably, until recently, and with the new version of SSMS, where it's now moved into, it's basically a fork of VS Code, they're moving all of the data people over, but they were also people who didn't really interact with these modern dev tools in the way that web developers and, the script kiddies would interact with. And so developer tools are way ahead of where data people are, and so we need to rapidly catch up. And so the first thing we needed to do was to make all of our files plain text so that we could take advantage of some of these tools. Power BI PBIP format is made up of a couple of different types of files. One of them is a TMDL file, a TMDL file. What does TMDL stand for? Great question. I can't remember. It's something markdown language, tabular markdown language, something like that. Essentially,
yes, that's right.
Was that right? Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So TMDL is designed to be very human readable. So an example of TMDL on the left-hand side here, you can see it just says there's a table called sales, there's a column called order date, there's a column called revenue, there's a measure called total revenue, and it just literally just writes it out in plain text. It's designed to be very human readable, similar to another format called YAML. And so, and YAML is one that's used a lot in the web dev community. It's also used a lot in the infrastructure as code community. So the infrastructure guys these days, you don't spin up a virtual machine anymore. What you do is you write a script and you hit go on that script. A YAML file gets created and it gets deployed into like an infrastructure thing, and it spins up the virtual machine automatically for you. So they've moved away from ClickOps, where you're going into the Azure portal or the AWS portal and turn on this virtual machine, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything's done as code now to take it for the similar reasons, right? And so web devs have kind of infected the infrastructure guys, and now they're infecting the data guys with their ways of working, if that makes sense. Oh, sorry, I scrolled accidentally. I was trying to scroll down here. Tabular model definition language. Thank you, Greg. So TMDL is fully ready to go. Really struggling with TMDL and conflict resolution in Git. Interested to hear if AI can help with this. Yeah, it's an interesting question actually. Is that we'll talk about merge conflicts and how we might approach those maybe a bit later if we can get to it. But essentially, TMDL is every table has a single file. So if you look in your folder full of files that's created by PBIP, you'll get a single file called sales.tmdl, and then that will represent that table. There's a relationships.tmdl, which represents all of the relationships in your Power BI file. And then you have things like expressions and roles and cultures and partitions and things will all be represented by different things. Now, this is generally available, and it's really designed. The reason why we're moving to this text-based stuff is so that both humans and AI can read it, and so it's really designed in that way. The second part of your PBIP format is PBIR format, which is the enhanced report format, right? So Power BI report format, basically. This is on the visual side. So if you think the TMDL file contains all of your tables and relationships, your PBIR format handles all of the visual elements. So every page, every visual, if you've got bookmarks, they get stored as a separate file with a public schema, and so that you can read that as just a JSON file. This is the thing you may have heard a little while ago that they were saying Power BI is becoming, PBIR is becoming the default format. And everyone was like, oh no, what's going to happen to PBIX? Well, actually what they meant was the default format within Power BI. So PBIX files will use PBIR format, and PBIP files will also use PBIR format. And so actually nothing is happening to PBIX. It's staying around. It was just a bit of confusion that Microsoft caused a little while ago. So they're now moving. So it's the default now for PBIP, and I think they've got it in preview as the default for PBIX. And the reason is because they want to make all of this kind of, they want to make the whole visual elements on the page more declarative and easier to kind of work with from either from a code perspective or from an AI perspective. And so this is the reason why they're making it default across everything. The nice thing about that is that it's just a standard JSON schema, which means it's very, very readable within a tool like VS Code, and obviously interact with AI. So the PBIP folder structure, basically how it looks. This is a good idea of what. So you get a my report. So the name of your report .semantic model, and that contains all of your TIMDL files, and then you'll get a my report or the name of your report .report, and that contains your basically your PBIR definitions, right? So your JSON files that tell you about reports, pages, the pages, and then all the visuals. Each visual has its own JSON file, each bookmark has its own JSON file, etc., etc. So that's a structure of files that live underneath the PBIP format. Cool. So now that we have our files sitting in a folder and our report saving to that file, what this really means is that we can properly integrate with Git. How many people are using kind of Git on a daily basis right now? And yeah, we've got Brenda's using Git a lot. Craig does. Yeah. Max. Yeah. Okay. So most people, well, maybe a decent number of people are using Git. If you didn't put your hand up just then, this is probably, I would say, is this the first thing you kind of need to learn about, at least conceptually? It's very important to start learning conceptually about how Git works. And the reason is because honestly, this is probably, I mean, I can't see any other way that it's going to go. It's really going to be the default way of interacting with files as a team. I know people use SharePoint and they have check-in and check-out kind of scenarios, and some people like to do that. You have other potential ways that you can handle the way that you share files in between each other, but Git is the standard way amongst all the other rest of the development community, and it's going to be hugely important to understand how Git works if you're not already across this. So essentially, what Git is a version control system. It was written like years and years and years ago. I think it was Linus, the guy who invented Linux, who also invented Git, which is insane to me that this guy is that much of a genius. The first time you look at Git, you'll be like, I don't understand how this works. And this happens literally to everybody who ever looks at Git for the first time. It is extremely kind of confusing conceptually to understand how all the bits and pieces work. My advice to you is to do it a few times, and you will start to see, oh, okay, I kind of understand why all of these things are like this. Git particularly doesn't make sense if you're used to just working by yourself on a single Power BI file. In fact, it feels like a huge waste of time and effort to go down to go down the path of implementing Git. Even if you're a solo developer, strongly recommend that you look at Git and start to learn how it works. So essentially, Git is you're going to be publishing your files up into your Git repository. Essentially the way that Git works is you have a local repository on your machine. That's basically a folder full of files. That's your local repository. Then you have a repository up in the cloud. That is your shared repository. That's where everybody can go and see those files. And you're creating a sync between those two things, just like conceptually the same as Dropbox or OneDrive, but you have to manually sync these things. It's not going to automatically sync for you. You have to intentionally commit your files up into the cloud and push those files up into the cloud, or you can do it via what's called a pull request, where you say you want to commit it and then somebody who owns that repository can pull that in. So you're requesting for them to pull it into the change, and that's the recommended way to do it. Very much worth looking at. I'll put some links in the chat and some getting started with Git. There's a really great GitHub have a really great some kind of getting started with Git series that you can get and you can learn all about how these different things work. There's a couple of VS Code extensions that will help you with dealing with these things as well. There's a Timdal extension and a Power BI Studio extension. We'll have a look at VS Code in a second and talk to you a little bit about setting all this stuff up, making sure that everybody's got that kind of base. All right. So when we have those foundational things, so when we have PBIP format and we have VS Code, and now we are syncing that to Git, now we have a situation where we can actually start to integrate AI into our workflow. So let's talk a little bit about the different AI kind of AI tools. Which ones that I use, and then I'll show you VS Code, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the ways that I kind of am approaching it right now. Some of you, I'm sure, I'm sure there'll be people on here who are like, man, I'm doing 10 times more than Greg is. And there'll be some people on here that's like, what is this? I don't even fully understand what you're talking about right now. So I feel like there's probably a mix of people on the call. So I'll try and have content for everybody, but we'll see how we go. So let's have a look at VS Code, and then we'll start to talk about how we can start to integrate AI. So this is VS Code. I'll open up a new window so it's less confusing looking. This is how VS Code looks when you first open it. Right? Like, okay, I've installed this. So this is, so if you're a real beginner, this is VS Code. It's the most popular coding interface in the world. It's free. You literally just go to Microsoft and download it. It's great. It's very simple, very basic code editor, and allows you to look at code like your PBIP files. You'll notice that it says things like clone Git repository here. And there's also this little button over here, which is the source control button, where you can open a folder or clone a repository here. And this is where you're interacting with Git. So the second thing that you'll need to do, you install VS Code, that's totally free, you download that. The second thing you do is you install Git for Windows. And so that's also free, and you can get that from I would advise going through GitHub and then getting the download from Git for Windows that way. I think Git is an open source free tool, and it's a little bit hard to click on the right one. It's pretty easy to click on a virus. So yeah, go to GitHub and say, hey, search I want Git or whatever, and then it will take you to the right location. But yeah, do be careful when you're downloading Git. So what that does is just sets up all of the Git stuff basically on your machine. And so that's the second piece. And then the third piece of the puzzle is that you need to have, you either need a subscription to GitHub Copilot, which is this tool here on the left-hand side. It's called Chat, but it's actually GitHub Copilot. And this is a standard part of VS Code. It'll probably say, hey, do you want to use it? Because it's integrated into VS Code. Now, if you have a subscription to the GitHub Copilot, you have access to a bunch of different models, right? So the thing that's quite cool about GitHub Copilot, you can see these are being deprecated, is that you get access to both Claude. So that's the latest Claude model, Claude Opus 4.6. This is it in fast mode. You also get access to the GPT Codex models, right? And so you can use Codex. You can also use Grok and Gemini and all of these other models as well. And so what GitHub Copilot have done nicely is that Microsoft have done deals with all of the different LLMs and said, we want to use any of you, and give our customers the choice to do that. And so it'll just consume your GitHub Copilot credits. You don't need to have an individual Opus license or an individual ChatGPT license or whatever to use that. Now, the thing is though, if you do happen to have, if you're like, I like Claude and I've just subscribed to Claude, I've already subscribed to Claude, or I think Susie, I think you said you currently use ChatGPT, or someone did. If you already have a ChatGPT license, then you can install an extension for just that particular one. So if I want to install the extension for, I've got a OpenAI, I've got one of every AI because I'm that kind of guy. And so I would go, oh, I need the Codex extension because that's the extension I need for my OpenAI stuff, and I can install. So I make sure that's the official extension from OpenAI. I click install, and then that will install the Codex extension for VS Code. What that means is I can now use my Codex, my OpenAI login, my ChatGPT login to use within VS Code as my chat interface, my AI interface in VS Code. So that's, if you've got GPT, that's the way you do it. If you've got Claude, then you install the Claude Code extension. And you just look for Claude, and you look for this one from Anthropic, the main one, and this is the Claude Code extension for VS Code. And this has 5.7 million users because everybody loves Claude Code right now. Why? Because Claude Code is amazing. How many? But Codex probably has 60 million users or something because it's OpenAI. Let's check. How many is OpenAI rocking? Does it say? I thought it said. Oh, maybe it's because I'm installing it. I've already bought in. I think this has like 5 million users. Yeah. So if you install Claude Code, you get two options. You get the little Claude symbol up here, or you can go over here and click on Claude Code next to chat, and then you get your little Claude interface. And if you're already using Claude, then you'll be pretty familiar with that little guy there, and you can start to do that. Now, in the Claude interface, I want to change my model, like a sweep model. You can switch to Claude, right? I don't access all of those other models like you do in your like you do in here in this is GitHub Copilot. And so GitHub Copilot's already installed, so that comes by default, but you will need a subscription. And so if we go here and we go GitHub Copilot, we'll just search it or whatever. It's just part of GitHub. Can you link the VS Code Copilot to an LLM model that you deployed via Microsoft Foundry? That is an excellent question that I have been meaning to up. I want to do exactly that, and I haven't done it. So we will find out today, right now. I believe the answer is yes, but I'm not 100% sure. I believe the answer is yes. So yeah, so you can see GitHub is hosted by github.com, Microsoft. You go in here, it'll tell you all about GitHub Copilot and sign up for GitHub Copilot. So which one do I use all day every day and get rid of all my credits? Literally 5 times a day. I use Claude right now. I think it's the best programming model that I've ever seen. Codex 5.3 is very good. It's very Claude's got some magic about it right now. Like it's just the way that it plans, the way that, and we'll talk about planning, the way that it does everything is just really, really nice. But you can get GitHub Copilot, you can use any of the models. That's a great way to go. I don't look at the plans and pricing. I'm not sure GitHub Copilot a little bit more than just getting
Sorry, Greg, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep.
Ever since you opened your browser, your Teams connection seems to have destabilized. Yeah, just letting you know that you're breaking up quite badly.
Oh, okay. Let me turn off my camera. All right, breaking up a lot. Sorry, folks. How are we going now? Is that better or worse?
Much better, much better.
Much better. Okay. Yeah, it wasn't a very good camera angle anyway. Sorry about that. Where did I get to? I was talking about GitHub Copilot. Thanks, Elias. So actually, GitHub Copilot's quite reasonable. For Pro, $10 USD a month. Is that really right? For individuals, you get everything for free. Now you'll get a number of credits, right? Or you could go for the Pro Plus and get extra credits. What you'll get, you get extra models and things like that. And so I'm on the Pro Plus, and so I get the 4.6 models, and you get extra requests. So I'd probably, if you're using this a lot, like on a daily basis, you'll at least want to do this. To give you an idea, I use the Claude $100 plan, so it's $100 a month, which is quite expensive. And you get an awful lot of AI for that. You can really smash that thing all day, every day. I literally was doing this last week because I had a deadline for all of this stuff I needed to build, and I was like smashing AI into it, and it ran out. Like I think it ran out twice during the week, and that was almost 24-hour a day use. So that's like a lot of AI. If you're just using this sort of, in a casual way. But I think you'll find once you see how useful it is, if you're not really used to it, you'll find that this is very much worth the money, 100% worth the money. So find the one that you think is that you want to go with. I would probably, they're all pretty good. And when I say they're all pretty good, I'm including things like Anthropic, Google Anti-Gravity, Cursor with integrated, I think that's Gemini AI, and all those tools. They're all forks of VS Code, and they're all great in their own way. And you'll be able to use a similar workflow. The main thing the reason why I use Claude so much is that is because the way that I use skills. I find it just easier with Claude. Although everyone has caught up with skills now, I think most people support skills, but Claude was kind of the first, and so I'm used to using it that way. Is the free version good enough to start using for development purpose? Absolutely. Yeah. Try the free version, see how you go. You're not going to get, you're going to quickly run out of stuff if you've got a large code base. But if you want to tool around with it and have a play with just, you also have slightly lesser models working for you. And yeah, I would say these models are going to make a lot more mistakes. The benefit of using something like Opus 4.6 is that it is unbelievably good at building reporting, not only reporting, but code, and the code is almost always right, 100% right. And it uses this plan and then do kind of action, which we'll see that it's extremely powerful. And so that's why these kind of premium ones they're kind of worth it at the moment. But yes, free is absolutely an option. If you just want to try it out, then yeah, try it out. Absolutely, try free. But I think you'll find you pretty quickly you want to be going to one of these paid things. Okay, so that's kind of getting set up with your extensions, getting set up with VS Code. You'll need a GitHub account. GitHub is free, so you can get a free GitHub account. And you'll want to, and I would recommend GitHub over Azure DevOps. I actually use Azure DevOps quite a bit as well for my work. GitHub integrates beautifully with these coding agents these days. You can code from your mobile. You can do all this kind of stuff if you've got a GitHub account. You can't really do that with other repositories. So GitHub is definitely the way to go from a repository choice perspective. If you have no choice, other repos are fine. Azure DevOps is fine. It will still work. Everything will be fine. But GitHub is just the preferred one in my opinion. Okay. So let's have a look at a bit of an example of what we're talking about then. So here I am in Power BI. I've got this space parts lakehouse. This lakehouse has no reports in it. I've got a little ontology I'm building for this FabCon demo. I have got a bunch of notebooks and things like that. Basically what I did is, and when I say I mean James Davey helped me out with this, so thanks, James. He's one of the data engineers that works for GetAI, and I said, hey, can you just take space parts and put it into a lakehouse and get it up to silver? So I don't want gold level stuff. I only want kind of up to silver level. And then what I'm going to do is try and build a bunch of reports on top of that. Okay, so where can AI help you with your report building stuff? So the first thing I wanted to cover was some of the early stage report building activities that I do on a kind of day-to-day basis, right? In the early stages, what I'm doing is I'm gathering requirements. I'm having workshops with the business, and I'm talking to them about their reporting, and I'm trying to figure out what they want, right? That's the first thing. So the way that I approach this, and I've done a little mock-up of this in the space parts thing here, is that I would actually have potentially a completely empty repo like this one, right? I've got nothing in here. I'll just open a random folder. I'll call it the demo folder. See, Git, new folder. Call it demo. So this is how you set up a new folder. So this is a completely blank project now. I have nothing in it. can go over to here and I'm going to get set up with stuff. Now, in my other folder here, in my other repo, which I'll go and get in my spaceparts my docs here, I've got a transcript of a conversation between business analyst and the head of sales. And the head of sales name is Reva, and the business analyst's name is Dara, and we work for Spaceparts. We're at Europa Station Conference Room number 7B. It went for 47 minutes, an awful lot of talking here.
Sorry, Greg.
VP of sales, this is
Sorry, are you breaking up quite badly again? And we're also just seeing a blank Visual Studio screen.
Having internet issues, obviously. Wonder if I can fix that easily.
Maybe try and reshare your screen.
Yeah, okay, I'll try that. How's that? Is it working?
Still coming up. No, at least from my side, we're not seeing anything, Greg. It looks like you're sharing, but it's just blank.
Yeah, it's blank from my side.
Yeah. Is it? Oh, just GN. I do have another. Just give me 1 second. I'll see if I can resolve this. 1 sec.
Right.
All right, first test. How is that? Can you just reshare my
screen? You're coming through very clearly now.
Yep, okay. Let's see if I can share.
Yep.
Scroll. All good?
Yep. Yeah, looking good now.
All right, we'll try this, and then I've got another alternative if that doesn't work. Apologies for that, folks. So just early stages of development, like where you're trying to get the thing. So the thing that I do literally every time now, I'll have a meeting with a customer or whoever I'm doing the report for. I record that meeting, I take this transcript, and I immediately just drop it in here into Claude Code, and I say, hey, tell me about this project.
Sorry, Greg, can I interrupt you there quickly? Just a question. When you say you record the meeting, are you talking about a Teams meeting or what about in person? Do you have any tools that you use to record in-person meetings?
Yeah, so interestingly, mostly Teams meetings. And we're in a remote world these days, which is very convenient. If it's an in-person meeting, I'll try and figure out a way to record. Now, you could just record it on your phone. That would be fine. I think I see the reason why I have internet issues is there's a person with a vacuum running around out there. I will often just record. You can record it on your phone. Then you take that recording and you just drop it into something that will give you the transcript. I think AI will give you the transcript these days. Just drop the recording in and go, hey, give me the transcript from this. So you could just drop it into a ChatGPT or into Claude or whatever. The thing that I do with Teams files is when you get the recording, you have the option of downloading it as a docx or a VTT. Download the VTT file. So that's just a plain text file of your transcript. And so that is the one that is going to be easier to read here. You'll be able to read it just straight out of like this. And so here on the in your VS Code folder. But yeah, there are little devices you can get and stuff that you can set up to record and transcribe all your meetings. A lot of salespeople and stuff are using them now for in-person meetings. But I would you always want to be saying, hey, I'm going to record this meeting. Is that okay? And then usually it's okay for you to just pull your phone out.
All right. Thank you.
Key reports we need to build. So this is a great way to, now the one thing I wanted to talk about is you want to be putting Claude into plan mode, and most of them have a plan mode now. You can see here I can swap between the different modes by clicking down here. This plan mode says, what plan mode will do is it'll look at all of the folders in the files in the folder, and then it'll come up with a plan. And the plan will usually read like something like this. And so if we bring this over, it says, oh, it's a sales reporting suite for space parts, part of this stuff. They've asked for these different dashboards. Now, this is a very well constructed plan, like conversation. This is a person who knows exactly what they want, and an analyst who knows everything about the data and can tell them what they can and can't have. So it's usually what you'll have is some mixed version of those things in reality. And if I drop but I do this with real customer conversations, and it's very good at figuring out, okay, here's the kind of reporting that you potentially will need to do. You can ask it to then, let's hide, there's a thing there, plan out the implementation of the report in Power BI. I'm still in plan mode. I'm just going to ask it to do that planning. And this kind of plan first and then do stuff operation is super, super important. And it's the one, I think Claude was the first to introduce it, but I strongly recommend that you put yourself into plan mode first before you do any kind of major change to anything. And if you do that, what it will do is be able to tell you a lot about what you need to do. It's a great way to kind of get your project started. It's a very fast way to get all those requirements down on paper and into something that you can potentially spin back to the customer. I do this a lot obviously for building out demos and stuff, but also you can see here in my docs folder here for this project, I got it to not only do a plan for the reporting, but I also got it to like come up with an information about the company. So this is all the different. So this is really, so context is king in AI, right? What you want to have and what you should start doing is collecting information about your company. What are your values? What are the strategic objectives of Q1? Who are the people who are associated with that? What's your brand portfolio? What are your growth brands? What are the things that you're interested in? Where do you operate out of? Who are the key players? Anything at a company level, you should capture in a company.md file or some kind of file that gives you information about your company. Then I captured all of the information about the different domains. Now, this essentially acts similar to like the Fabric ontology, right? What this is doing is giving the AI a lot of context about the company and who's in it and how it kind of works. So every time you say, hey, tell me a little bit about this XYZ data, it has all of that context about who the company is and all that kind of stuff, information about the team you're in. You could put information about yourself in there, or you could put information about what you want the agent to do in a thing called a .claude.md file. That will actually always read that file before it does anything else. And so if you create a .claude, yep, lost me.
Sorry to interrupt. No, you're sounding great now. But there's been a couple of questions around security and privacy. And I don't know if you can see your questions, but
I can. Yeah. Try your phone's hotspot if you have plenty of data. I am on my phone's hotspot. Thanks, Patrick. Sorry, Greg. How about security concerns like dropping it into AI in case there's sensitive info in the recording? Yes. So this is a key thing, and this is something you have to be concerned of. I'm going to focus on speed here and not spend too much time talking about security and ethics, but you're spot on about that you need to consider that. It will. So one thing that you could do is you could desensitize these transcripts before you put them in. It really just depends on where you're at with and the type of model that you use. So that question earlier, which is can you link VS Code Copilot to an LLM model that you've deployed via Microsoft Foundry, would actually mean that you're deploying your LLM model, the one that you're using in VS Code, is controlled locally by you in your own Azure environment and can't be seen by anyone else. It'd be like you're hosting your own model. And that's the reason why that's such an important question, right? Is because then potentially you can do all this kind of stuff and you don't have to worry about the privacy concerns because you've got your own hosted private model. The other thing that you could do is if you're worried about Claude, you don't want to give it to Anthropic or whatever, and you're not sure about the security or you can't get that past security, you could use something like a Microsoft Copilot 365 type thing, which has enterprise data protection and is already all inside the thing. You could drop your transcript in there and potentially get this information out from there as well. That's a totally valid way to do it. So yeah, but security isn't obviously a very big thing, but yeah, not. I shouldn't say not part of the scope of this because it actually is. But what I'm focusing on is how fast can we do these things right now, and then what's coming in the future is kind of where my focus is at the moment. I also got Claude. Claude is incredibly good at building decks. And so I got it to build a deck about space parts, our little thing here. This is this is our mission. This is at a glance. These are real numbers, and I'll talk to you about how it's getting correct, accurate numbers out of the data set soon. Here's our mission. Here's the product catalog. These are AI generated images, obviously. So what Claude is actually, and this is something that often surprises people that haven't looked at AI for a little while, is Claude's getting really good at Office documents, PowerPoint decks, things like that. I have not edited anything in this. This is the only mistake in it, this weird thing that goes off into nowhere. And that was actually OpenAI's fault because it generated the image properly, incorrectly. Literally everything in here is correct, and I haven't had to change a single thing. It validates it for you. It looks at it and says, it creates images of each of the slides and goes, oh no, that doesn't look quite right, and fixes them up. It's unbelievable at making decks and things like that now. The reason why is that it uses these things called skills. So I've got a skill called PPTX, which I downloaded from Anthropic. This is a skill that allows Claude to interact with PPT files really, really well. So it knows how to create pitch decks. It can create different decks of different types. It knows how to design decks. It knows how PPT works. There's also one for DocX, one for Excel, one for PDF, and a few other things. And so interacting with these skills is a key way to really increase the power of your AI, right? And so he's got the PPT skill loaded. Now I can help you with reading and analyzing a PPT deck. And so using these custom skills to build custom solutions like this is going to be, I think, the way of the future when we get into like these modern things. Once we solved all the privacy and security stuff, we're actually into developing with this stuff. You're going to be turning on these skills. You'll have a list of skills that's available to you. I think if I type / it'll show me all the different skills. Here they are. So I can do algorithmic art, I can do brand guidelines, I can do canvas design, and then you'll see DocX is here and PPTX. And now there's one called Fabric Lakehouse. I'll tell you about that in a sec. And there's one called Skill Creator to create your own skills. And so these read up on skills and how they work, because skills are going to be the thing that really take your AI from like something that kind of gets things wrong sometimes and doesn't really do a very good job to building like quality PPT files and other files in like a fraction of the time. And so my theory is, well, if I can use this for PPT, can I build PBIP files with the skill? Is that going to be a thing? And so I created a skill, I think it's called Create PBIP, and I've not tested it yet. So We're literally going to try it live and see what it does. The second thing is I've got this other skill, which is called Fabric Lakehouse. Now, this is similar to a Fabric MCP server, but all this does is connects to a Fabric Lakehouse and allows you to query it. And it actually connects to the Fabric SQL Analytics endpoint. So I wanted this because I wanted to have my agent, the thing that I'm talking to here on the right, be able to dynamically go and connect to my Lakehouse and query the data. And in fact, it used this skill to get these numbers. So what it did was say, oh, I need the numbers for the number of active products. And it just wrote some SQL to do that. And so I'll show you a little bit about how this works. So if I go /Fabric Lakehouse, why isn't that coming up anymore? Fabric /Fabric Lakehouse, about the schema, what is the space part? Schema. It'll go away. And now 4.6 is incredibly good at writing things like SQL. And so it goes, okay, I know how to connect to this lakehouse because I've got this skill. And the only thing that you need for the lakehouse is this fabric config.json. Literally just tells it what the endpoint is. So you could connect to any lakehouse with this skill. And it goes, oh, here's the different tables and things that you have available to you. Okay, so there's an 18.5 million row invoice table. There's a bunch of different rows and all these different things. And so now my AI has context of my current layout, right? And my current data. The other thing that you can do with things like skills is that you can get it to do mock-ups really, really well. And one thing that Claude's really good at is web development. And so what I do is that as this second part, I've got all I know my data and I've got access to connect to my data. I know my requirements because I've dropped that in and I've got the requirements now. And now I'm like, how do I take these data and these requirements and start mocking up something to get back to the company as soon as possible? And so I literally just ask it. I say, hey, can you design up some mock-ups for the sales domain for all of those reporting? And I think what it did was it first came up with a plan. This was the plan. Space part, sales reporting, design phase. Notice everything is in text. Honestly, I just interact with everything in text files now because I know my AI can read it. And so it says the VP of sales needs this comprehensive reporting suite. Here is the space parts branding. And I got this from the space parts decks. So I didn't actually ask it to do branding, but it figured out the branding itself. I also said use the 330-300 structure, which is from sqlbi.com. If you're familiar with this is a Power BI reporting structure to say, you want to show things at a glance and then do explore and investigate. There's a great article on it. Go to it, and that's Kurt Bueller wrote it for sqlbi.com. So I said use 330-300 structure and then design some report pages, and it came up with this plan for all the different report pages. And then I said to it, hey, why don't you go and build some HTML mockups of these reports, right? And so it did. And so if I go here, and I'll just reveal this in File Explorer so we can see these files. And then I'll just open up the front end file. Now you look at that and go, oh, it doesn't look very good. Hopefully this worked. Is this going to open or is it being annoying? We're opening Edge, yeah, that's fine. Always. All right. And here's our mock-up. And this is exactly, there was 9 different reports that it asked for, and it literally mocked them up. Now, before it mocked them up, it actually queried the database and got all of these numbers correct as well. Now, does this replace Power BI? No, not yet. I can't filter. So it doesn't work. It's just a mock-up. And then if I click on anything that isn't on the front page, then there's no charts, right? Now, this is a very high fidelity mock-up. You could say that this, and it literally, like this repo had nothing in it 2 days ago, and now I've got a mock-up of the complete sales domain reporting that I can go back to the salesperson or whatever and say, okay, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Does this look right to you? It's using correct numbers so that you don't have that issue. And you're really able to kind of show a full fidelity version of what you think these reports might look like. It's got some funky little things like this network graph with the animation that I couldn't do in Power BI. So one school of thought here is that instead of doing a high fidelity mock-up like this, is that you make it look like a mock-up. You make it look like it's hand drawn, and you can actually ask Claude to do that, and it'll make it look hand drawn instead of like a full fidelity mock-up, which is pretty cool. But this is another very fast way to start mocking up data and getting it in front of people very, very quickly. So you've basically gone from, you've had the meeting, you get the transcript, you have a full fidelity mock-up. You could probably do that within a couple of hours of having the meeting, to be honest. It doesn't take very long for it to kind of pull all this stuff together, particularly if you have that baseline Fabric connection that you can connect, or any SQL database really that you can connect into and have it query the data. And as long as you've got a safe SQL endpoint where you're read only on the data, you definitely don't want to give AI the ability to write to your databases or anything like that, then you're good to go from that perspective. Obviously, notwithstanding security, ethics, and all of these other things that we're kind of glazing over in this talk. So now I've progressed through, I've got a full fidelity mockup, and then this is the bit I was just going to try live. I built a skill for it to build Power BI PBIP files. I was just going to try and see if it can build one of these reports and see if it works. So I'll get that started now, and then we'll hopefully it'll finish in the next few minutes. You have access to a SQL endpoint, or should we scaffold it with some dummy data? So what's it doing? Oh, this is trying to build out the reporting. It asks you questions, clarifying questions, which is quite nice if you haven't seen that before. So it's asking me clarifying questions about my request to see what I want to do. And so I'm like, yeah, use the Fabric Lakehouse and create 9 separate reports. And it gives you a recommended thing as well, which is kind of fun. Okay, but anyway, I don't want it to do that. I was just showing that as a demo. I want to go back to my main. This is my main folder. This one has all of the context in it. This actually also has all of the notebooks and everything from the Fabric Lakehouse. This is synced to my Fabric Lakehouse. So I could go in here and get it to edit notebooks if I want to as well. Susie says, I built a cost allocation model in Power Query in Power BI. It allows me to hide my workings from the general audience. The report is then built on the resulting data. Would it be possible in what you're showing, Copilot and ChatGPT couldn't give me the right coding? Definitely help with the ideas, but didn't nail it. Yes, if you are struggling with ChatGPT doing not very good coding, try this method because Claude is awesome at coding. And ChatGPT is too, but only in the right context. The key thing is really how many different files you've got in here and the context that you have so that it knows what it's talking about. Cost allocation. So you're doing cost allocation and it's all in Power Query. Okay. So you'll build, and then you build off the resulting data. Okay. So you've got a Power BI with awesome Power Query that you refresh and then you build that data off, and you're doing forecasting and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Definitely worth having a crack at. You know, if you can do a anonymized version of that or whatever, if you're worried about security, and you can connect to some dummy data and start playing around with it, similar to what I'm doing here with this space part stuff. Obviously, there's no sensitive data in here. It's a publicly available data set. And so this is where I'm kind of my sand pit for where I'm playing with this kind of stuff. Anyway, so what I wanted to do, I've got my domain sales. It's got a plan in here somewhere for the design of the reports, which is this one. Let's see if we can just build one of the order pipeline report in PBIP using the skill. So I'll say, it's like create PBIP. Can you create the order pipeline? PBIP for this, for the sales domain. I probably should get it to plan first, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to get it. I'm going to put it in YOLO mode, which is bypass permissions. This is something you shouldn't do, but I'm doing it so that it won't ask me any questions, right? I'm just getting it to go away. I don't care if it blows away this whole machine. It's not a big deal for me. But bypass permissions is dangerous. You could have your AI accidentally delete your hard drive, for example. So just be careful with that. Or your whole repo or whatever, like stuff like that can happen. It'd be very, very unlikely, particularly with modern modern AI, but if you're using some of the lesser things, just be careful with that's off by default. You actually have to turn it on manually for it to work. Okay, so that's going to go away. It's got a methodology for creating proper PBIP, well-structured PBIP projects from the specs. So I'm hoping what it'll do is it'll figure out some stuff, and eventually we'll have a PBIP file. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to figure all of that out. It's possible that it will take longer than we have, so we'll come back to that in just a sec. All right, back to the presentation while that's doing its thing. So like I said, MCP servers, which are servers that can, like you've got the Fabric MCP server, the Power BI modeling MCP server, they're good. What they do is give you a series of tools available to your AI that you can interact with, and you can ask it. So similar to those skills, that skill had one thing it can do. It only knows how to build PBIP files. The PBI modeling MCP server has a series of skills. You can connect to data, you can read data, you can do DAX queries. There's all of them in one. The reason why MCP servers have gone out of favor is because they're so big and they use up all of your what we call the context window. So you've only got so much stuff you can put in the request, right? So only so much text you can put in your request. MCP servers are very big. They have a lot of information in them. And so they use a huge amount of your context window up. And so that means your AI is kind of dumber when it interacts with MCP servers. And so we don't like that. What we want is just one skill that it can do, and then we call that skill dynamically. And that's why I think MCP servers are potentially going out of fashion compared to skills. But we'll see. This is, like I said, next week, this will all change. And we'll be back to square one. But it'll give you a bit of an idea, hopefully, of what's possible. So what can you do with your GitHub Copilot? I'll just get this going. I know I have to swap it over again. Swap it over. Cool. Minimize that. So you can chat with your Power BI file. So you can actually, through the Power BI MCP server, you could have Claude go and you could ask it questions like, you know, how many sales did we get last week? And it'll use your semantic model. And that can be a local Power BI file on your local machine. So there's a fully local scenario you can run. You can run the MCP server locally, and you can chat to your local machines in your local Power BI files inside Power BI Desktop. Similar to the way DAX Studio connects to it and Tabular Editor connects to your model. You can also connect your agent to that model, and you can have it ask questions about Tyndall, about DAX. This is really good for documentation of your Power BI file. This is really good for anything to do with, if you wanted to just create a document describing everything in your Power BI file, just use this, right? Take you 5 minutes. If you want to understand what your DAX is, get it to outline all of the DAX inside your file and explain each one of them. Explain each one of the errors or each one of the formulas. If you wanted to troubleshoot errors or whatever, you've got an error with your DAX, you could open up your PBIP file inside VS Code there and just have your AI look at it and see if it can figure out what the issue is. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff you can potentially do in terms of interacting with your files. You could select a certain section of the code and say, hey, I want to do a change. You can put it in planning mode and say, I want to plan this change first, and then it'll tell you what it thinks, what it's going to do, and you can say, actually, no, that's not quite right. Do it this way, and then it'll change the file for you based on that change. You could just do what I'm doing here and just make it do an autonomous multi-step thing and completely build a report from scratch and see how it comes out. Like you could go crazy on that. And so you could do this both in GitHub Copilot or in Claude Code or in Codex. All of these ones will allow you to do this kind of interaction. Why do I like Claude? Claude has a very large context window. I've already spoken about how I think it's the best programmer at the moment. The fact that it does that planning first means that it does very nice analysis of DAX patterns and things like that. You can ask it, you could build skills around DAX to point it to particular, you could point it to SQL BI, get the Italians to teach it first before you do any of that stuff. And so I know a lot of people, Microsoft talk about their, Power BI Copilot, the native Power BI Copilot experience and the native Fabric Copilot experiences. In Australia, the issue with that is that those services, the LLM for those services, are hosted only in America and France. They're the only two places you can interact with Copilot, which basically means that for all those security reasons, we don't really want to be sending our data overseas, and there is that concern. And so this is a way that you can do this. You could spin up a local model, connect to it in AI Foundry, or connect to one of your local OpenAI models instead, and have everything local. It's never leaving Australia. And so this pattern is something that I think is going to allow that. And so I think it's a really, really powerful pattern. Obviously, if you're going to Claude, you're going to Anthropic, and that means, well, who knows? But like I said, Claude's fun. So up to you what kind of risks you want to take. This is the agent mode that we've just got working on our stuff at the moment. Does GitHub Copilot have skills, or is that just Claude? No, yes, GitHub Copilot does have skills. So inside your GitHub Copilot, you have there's a .claude folder and skills in there, and there's also a .copilot. I think it's .copilot folder, and you can add skills in there. Now that's literally brand new. I think GitHub Copilot, even maybe this version we're looking at, doesn't support skills, or maybe it does. It's literally just come out in the last week or so, is skills inside GitHub Copilot, because they're chasing Claude. Claude's kind of the market leader at the moment. That wow, it's already finished. The market leader in this thing. Order PBIP project has been generated. Here's what was created: the Open Order Pipeline PBIP in Power BI Desktop. Created a simple data model. So I didn't use data from Fabric, which is fine. I'm genuinely just interested to see if it actually builds something that's useful. All right, let's open it up and see what it looks like. This is where we all realize we're out of a job. Okay, so reports. Shared. Where did he look? Where did they save it? Oh, what a pipeline report. Here it is. There's a dot report. There's a spec.json. There's a PBIP file. Okay, I see it. I see it. I see where I am. Open, reveal. We're all out of a job. Yeah, I know. It feels a bit like that. Okay. So first glance, there's a PBIP file that looks correct. There's an order pipeline.semantic model and an order pipeline support report that does have stuff in it that looks like a proper PBIP. It's got all the correct files as far as I can see. Created a definition.pbir. I wonder if that's correct. All right, I want to take bets. Who thinks this? I'm going to double click on this and it's going to work first time. Put your hand up. Yep, Susie thinks. Susie believes. Good work. Max is like, nope. Craig thinks yes. Brenda thinks yes. Okay. Somewhat, maybe. David's like, I don't know. Janessa says no, no way. No way. I genuinely don't. I literally have never tested this skill. So I'm so curious. But okay, there's a few say yes, a few that say no. All right. This is either like an epic flex or it's going to be a massive failure. All right, let's see how we go. We're double clicking. Power BI hasn't crashed yet, so far so good. Working on it. The suspense. Loading the data model. Come on, AI. Will AI replace our jobs? Issues were found. There is a problem with the definition content in your Power BI. Invalid line. Well, I'm sorry to say, folks, we're not out of a job yet. Anyway, I will get this working. I will get it working, and I'll show you guys well, I'll see if I can anyway.
Greg, when business users actually learn how to express what they actually want, then we're out of a job.
That's true. That is true. That's true. Anyway, folks, I've got a million things I can talk about. I can talk about this literally forever. So I'll pause it. There feels like a right time to pause there. I'm happy to answer any questions or any if you've got any other things. But yeah, we'll wrap it up for now with the humans winning. Hooray for humans! Yep. Yes, that's exactly. Okay, I'm going to copy this message and I'm going to get AI to fix it while we're having questions. Copy details to clipboard. Yay, humans. That's not the right project. That was the other one I opened. We got a Tyndall error. Does it show it all? Oh, yeah. Oh, it gives a pretty solid error if you copy it. Look at that. Massive. All right, we'll see if it figures it out. All right, humans 1, robot 0. That's where we're at the moment. Azure DevOps versus GitHub for repos. What are the advantages of GitHub? The main advantage for GitHub is just how easily. So the way that you kind of do it, we're doing it now is that we're doing it on VS Code and we're interacting with just a repo in the normal way. But what people are doing is, if you have GitHub, you can also spin up a web session from your phone, and so you can literally be like, hey, can you update that report I was working on and from your phone, and then Claude starts a web session, updates it all, publishes it all back, and so you can actually interact with your mobile and with the web and do Claude remote control and all that kind of stuff, and it's all seamlessly integrates with GitHub. You can't do that with Azure DevOps, but having said that, all my business stuff I do through Azure DevOps. Like this Space Parts demo is in Azure DevOps, for example. But all my personal stuff I do through GitHub in a private repo in GitHub, because is a nicer experience. Here it is fixing. The issue is Tyndall requires identifiers with spaces to be single quoted. The generator isn't quoting measure names. Let me fix the script. All right, it's fixing it up. Oh, now it's fixed it. Try opening it again. All right, I'll trust you. Do you switch Claude model in planning and the switch model in Claude for planning and agentic work, Opus for planning and Sonnet for agent works? Yes. Yeah, I think this is a really great question. So talking about, do you use the more powerful model for planning and then the slightly lesser model for like agentic type work? That's a great way to do it. Planning, really you want 4.6 for all of your planning stuff. It's really, that's the key. It's much stronger if you plan first. And then, like, if I had planned that Tyndall update, it might have caught that issue, for example, right? And so, yes, I would strongly recommend that, because then you're saving your money as well, right? Because Opus 4.6 is very expensive. And so it's usually going to use a lot of credits. And so what you want to do is have that, only use that sort of sparingly, and then switch back when you switch to the Sonnet model for just regular everyday tasks, if you're just doing basic changes. But if that's not working for you, then yeah, 4.6 by default is pretty strong. All right, we'll have another crack at this report. Dun, dun, dun. Will the robots ever win? Dun, dun. Okay, what did it come up with? Measure names are properly single quoted. The fix was in the PBIP skill. Okay, all right. Loading data model. Loading queries. It's going to work, isn't it? Some tables have incomplete or no. Oh, it's trying. It's trying. Refresh the data. Refreshing. Oh, it's loading rows. Total pipeline value doesn't exist. There's an issue with it. It's kind of, the field was deleted and can't be found. Okay, interesting. So it almost worked. What happens if I drag this in? Does it show it properly? Oh yeah, there you go. Just need to fix up a few syntax things and you're away. This is similar to the Copilot PBI, Power BI thing though, right? So what I'm really interested in, so this is what I'll be experimenting with. So, you know, follow me on LinkedIn or whatever, I guess. I'm going to see if I can get it to like properly, like do a nice format and do all like, get it to look like that HTML editor one. And so AI chose the graphs, yeah. Pie chart, instantly sacked. All right. Can we use your create PBIP? Yes, you can. I will. I'll create a public repo and I'll put the fabric skill and the PBIP skill on my fabric in my public repo. So I'll give you a link to that. If I'm already using GitHub Copilot and happy with the security of that, should I have any concerns about the Microsoft MCP server? I haven't jumped onto that yet because it's preview and just released. Main thing I like is live edit with VS Code and Power BI open at the same time. Oh, interesting. Yeah, security of MCP servers is an interesting one. You definitely want to look into it. Yeah, I don't fully know about the Microsoft MCP server. It kind of depends where you're hosting it is one of the main things. If you're hosting the MCP server locally or remotely, or if you're using the public one, yeah, I definitely wouldn't be doing anything prod in it right now unless you're very, very confident. So yeah, I think you need to look into that. I haven't looked into it that much. Like I said, I was like all gung ho for MCP servers, and then I found skills, and I'm like, I don't need MCP. Well, it made a valid PBIP form report, so maybe the robots will win eventually. That's a lot of progress. Cool. All right, folks. Well, I better wrap it up because otherwise I'll just be here forever, and it's 8:30 in my neck of the woods, and so I better go. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Thanks, folks. Appreciate you. I will share that Git repo. Let me create a Git repo and then share it. Wait, I've already got one actually, and I just need to make it public. Let me do that right now. I'll stop sharing and jump on and do that stuff.
Awesome stuff, Greg. That was fascinating. Thank you very much. As always, an excellent speaker with very interesting topics. So really appreciated that. And we look forward to having you present to us again sometime in the future.
Yeah, happy to. No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in April. Now, we need to figure out the date because I know that the date we had planned is slap bang in the middle of Easter. So just watch the space. Gilbert and I will, within the next couple of weeks, decide exactly when our next meeting is. Thank you.